Hi guys, it's
Hello.
Janae.
Hi,
I just wanted to say hi and also introduce, well, somebody who doesn't really need any sort of introduction, but Mr. Andy Hatch from Upland Cheese. So, Andy, would you tell us about you and Upland Cheese?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me, Janae. It's really nice to see your face and to socialize a little bit. You'd like to know a little bit about us in the generic, basic sense?
Yep.
Yep. So we're a family dairy farm. My wife and I, Caitlin and I, own and run the farm together with another couple, Scott and Liana. We're all in our late 30s. I turned 40 this year. Um, and we milk 200 cows here and make cheese seasonally. So we don't milk our cows through the winter. Springtime now, we're at the kind of the tail end of calving. So all of our cows calve now. Pasture starts growing, and we start making cheese. We make an aged cheese called Pleasant Ridge Reserve during the summer months when the cows are on pasture. And in the fall, when the cows start eating hay, we make a soft cheese called Rush Creek, and then dry the cows up by about Christmas, hibernate, and do it all over again.
All right. So, I know we've talked and you said that you have just started making cheese for the season.
Yes, I'm in my whites. I'm sweaty. We're done for the day, but yeah, we're a couple days in for the season, so just started.
So, can you tell me about your business model and what it looked like before COVID? Like, are you well distributed around the country? Just kind of give me a general sense of um, how present are you everywhere?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, Uplands Cheese has been around for 20 years, and we make about 120,000 pounds of cheese a year. I mean, to put that in perspective locally, there are quite a few cheese factories around here who make more than that in a day. So, in the scheme of Wisconsin cheesemaking, we're quite small, but we're distributed nationally. So, I think about 20% of our sales were restaurants, and about 25-30% small independent cheese shops, about 10% through direct to consumers, our website, etc., and then the rest, what I call, grocery stores, Kowalski's, Hy-Vee, Whole Foods. So at 20 years old, I mean, I'm not sure we're a mature business, but we're stable. And Scott and I bought the farm from our predecessors 6 years ago, and carry debt, which makes us a little less stable. That's something that's, I think, meaningful in the scope of the pandemic. Um, and the other thing I think that's interesting to think about for a business like ours is how lopsided the cash flow is. And if anybody listening runs a small independent cheese shop, it's might not be all that different. You make your money during the fourth quarter and sort of scrape by the rest of the year. Well, in a similar sort of way, seasonal cheese making, there are times a year where you spend a lot of money, and then times a year when you can harvest some money. And we're on the front end of the spending season. Unfortunately, we're about to make 200 days of cheese and just tuck it away, and not expect to earn a dime from that cheese for about a year. So that's also, I think, relevant to the bigger kind of economic situation for
Yeah,
us.
I mean, that's definitely a thing to note that a lot of people don't really realize. Um, so that's interesting that you said that your restaurants is kind of a smaller percentage than a lot of other people that I've talked to, um, because I've talked to a lot of people who are like almost 50 to 70% of their revenue is from restaurants. So
Yeah,
it's kind of a good thing that you have a little bit more in other diversified areas.
yeah. Chefs are shady. Don't sell the chef. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. And to be fair, the 20% is a number I couldn't even quote accurately. When we sell cheese to your husband, among other people, I don't always know where it ends up. How much of cheese going through Provisa ends up at food service versus retail. So 20% is a guess. It might be a little low.
So then let's get into what's changed, what's going on with you now. Like, how do you feel about things currently with COVID, and what's going on?
Yeah. Nervous, but not panicked. Um, I mean, it feels ridiculous to compare miseries, or but I think as far as difficulties go, the timing for us wasn't as bad as it could have been. We carry almost no staff through the winter. Most of our employees are seasonal because our workload is seasonal. Um, and so when this struck, we were already running very lean. We had just started calving. We hadn't started making cheese. So the HR side of it wasn't as painful as it might have been. I didn't have to lay people off and deal with the stress of trying to figure out how to operate in close proximity and health risks. Um, we were also, I think, a little lucky in that we've got a cheese that's meant to age. So sales tanked, but that wasn't an immediate panic for cheese quality. If this had happened and the caves were full of Rush Creek, it would have been sheer panic. For all of the reasons, we have 18 people working here in the fall. It's very close quarters. You've been here during that time
Yeah.
of year. It's shoulder to shoulder. And Rush Creek is such a hand touchy cheese. So in that sense, we were a little lucky. So those are our blessings. I think our curses are, we're young people who are carrying debt, and so those are bills that just show up every month. Today's the 28th, and on the 1st, I've got to pay the bank. So we're a little bit, I don't want to say vulnerable in that sense, but we are. And we're also a little bit vulnerable, as I was saying earlier, in our business model requires us to endure such an expensive summer, putting away a whole season's worth of cheese. And we, run out of money every September. And you scrape the barrel, and then holiday cheese sales kick in, and you come back out of it. So, our perspective at this point is, is asking ourselves how much money can we afford to spend this summer putting away cheese? Are we going to, how low is the trough going to go, and then how high is the wave going to pick us up in October, November, December? And like I said, I'm nervous but not panicked. We certainly are going to make thousands of wheels of cheese. We need to, and so that means for the next 6 weeks, 2 months, we're gonna make cheese every day.
Yeah.
And my hope is that, and we have enough money to do that. So
And I
my
also
hope,
just wanted to delineate so people understand how your business is run too. That you run the cheese side of things, and Scott runs the farm side of things. So while they're the same entity, it is essentially a separate being, the farm itself, right?
yes, and that actually becomes important in putting our situation in perspective, because we don't use 100% of our milk for cheese. There are times of the year, usually the very early lactation and the very late lactation, when we sell milk. And we started making cheese last week, which is early. We were lucky that we had an early spring because we got kicked off the milk truck. And you've been reading about farms dumping milk. If we didn't have a vat into which we can dump milk, we would be dumping it in the field. So we got kicked off our milk truck. And there are times of the year we need to function as a dairy farm, and you think being a cheesemaker is hard right now. Being a dairy farmer is even harder. So when it comes to figuring out how much cheese we're going to make, the other side of that coin is, are we going to be able to sell milk if we're not turning it into cheese? The answer right now is no. And so you see other farmstead operations who've had to dial down their production. If they don't have an avenue to sell that milk, they end up selling cows. And that triggers a whole cascade of negative effects potentially. You start selling cows, you reduced your ability to come back and produce more milk next year, etc. So that's going to be that's something we're very worried about too. But for the next 2 months, or several months, as long as weather holds out, I'm confident we'll put all the milk into cheese. And to not be totally gloomy, the conditions out there are really nice. The milk is beautiful right now. We've had a really nice spring, to be fair. The planting conditions were great. Grass is up. We have an inch of warm rain on the way tonight. I mean, some things are looking good.
Yeah. So in thinking about kind of the future of selling your cheese, do you have any strategies that you're thinking about in terms of like just trying to figure it out? Because you guys already do gift boxes and whatnot on your website. Is there any other ideas that you're percolating to possibly incorporate?
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few, and I don't think any of them is especially novel. I'm sure they're things you're already talking about. I mean, more sales direct to consumers is obvious, and our website is up 50% over last year, and we'd always sort of sold cheese online as a way to get cheese to people who didn't live near a cheese shop that carried our cheese. We're not set up to do it very efficiently. We would much rather sell cheese to cheese shops. So I hope to never be in a position where I have to replace sales to cheese shops with sales through our website. But that's certainly a possibility going forward. So taking some steps to try to make our website shipping direct to consumers more efficient. We picked up flat rate shipping, some new software just to handle volumes of orders better. Basically, just trying to clean it up and be ready to do some more volume if that's what happens. But certainly not our first choice. Another idea kicking around is selling pre-cuts of Pleasant Ridge to grocery stores that don't have the labor to cut whole wheels. I'm sure that's something you've heard other people talking about.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people have been talking about it, and I think that the pressure is definitely there on the grocery end. But so far, the people that I've talked to don't really want to go that route because they want to preserve the integrity of their whole wheels and
Yeah.
things like that. So
Yeah, I mean, you'll never, our cheese in particular, cheeses like ours in particular, will never taste better when they're cut fresh from a wheel. And we will always try to prioritize selling to those stores. But you could say that the writing is on the wall that those options are getting more limited while options for sales via pre-cuts are expanding. And if this is going to be about survival, which it very well may be, I'm not above it. And in fact, and this is not me just trying to rationalize a decision I'd rather not make. I really do think that when done right, pre-packaging cheese in plastic, removing some oxygen, even shooting a little nitrogen in the bag, is going to be better for the cheese than cutting it at a store and hand wrapping it in plastic. And I would not have admitted that. I would not have thought that. But we've been doing some trials, and I'm certain it's better when done right. And there's some other things that put it into perspective, I think. Number one is um, control over quality. So many producers like us go to such great lengths to control the whole process, breeding the animals, raising the animals, feeding them, milking them, making the cheese, aging the cheese. And then at the very last step, we give away the whole wheel. And, there are some shops, as we all know, that do a wonderful job handling it and others that don't. Why would we not take control of that final step? Um, Food safety is another issue. If you're able to control the food safety in that final step, there's other advantages in that. Proper labeling, more shelf life. So it's not something I feel excited about. What excites me is walking into a cheese shop with a knowledgeable monger who tasting cheese to customers. That's always how I want to buy cheese. That's always how I'd rather sell my cheese. But if prepackaged cheese is the future, I think we can. I think we can do a good job. I think we can do right by the cheese. It will certainly be better than other pre-cut circumstances that we currently see, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and one last thing, there's going to be, if we do go this route, there will be a hurdle for public perception, right? You look at plastic and you think, it's industrial, it's commodity. Is it not the same thing as beer in cans? 10 years ago, did we not look at beer in cans and be like, what is that swill? You'd never put nice beer in a can. Look at us now. I mean, if it's better for quality, if it's better for all the reasons I just mentioned, and consumers come to understand that.
I think that was a big hurdle for a long time, and it took a lot of really knowledgeable beer people to really kind of push that forward, that beer in a can is not this big terrible thing. So I still think that there would have to be definitely a movement of cheesemongers to kind of get behind a cryovac piece of Pleasant Ridge and be able to.
It would take some super educated, motivated monger in Seattle with time on her hands.
Oh, I don't know. Those kind of
mobile and
So let's talk about your caves. Is this affecting your affinage at all? Are you looking into different, I was talking to Cascadia Creamery yesterday, and they've had to, they're all year round, so they have a lot of product in their caves, but they've had to kind of put some stuff in cooler temperatures to kind of put it in stasis.
Slow it down.
Do you think that there's anything like that you have to worry about right now? Or are you good for a few months to not have to have that conversation?
Yeah, we're good for a few months. I mean, you visited us and you can picture, our inventory, our cheese inventory expands and contracts so much throughout the year. So we are less than half full now. So excuse me, like I said earlier, I'm confident we're gonna keep making cheese every day while the grass is good for the next few months. The difficult decision point will be when the caves start to fill up. What do you do? And I know there are a lot of producers facing that now. Do you start slashing prices to try to move cheese out so you can fill it with more cheese? Well, filling it with more cheese just costs you more money, and it's a really difficult position. And I'm lucky I'm not in that now, but I can obviously see it coming around the corner. How do you make plans?
Yeah.
So I'm not faced with that decision now. I'm faced with trying to make plans, anticipating that decision. It's really hard to plan when we really don't know what the economy is going to look like in 2-3 months. So I'm sort of, sitting tight and running as lean as possible. Which, if there's one thing farmers know how to do, it's do without and run cheap. And when that decision comes, hopefully, we'll know a lot more, for better or for worse. But So no, technically the way we're approaching the cheese and the affinage is the same. Interestingly, related to that point, the Center for Dairy Research here at the University of Wisconsin just held a webinar for producers all about how to adjust your cheese making to, anticipate longer aged cheese. I will say the Center for Dairy Research, the Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association, our kind of state's industry trade group, the dairy farmers of Wisconsin have been really responsive and helping producers think through issues like that.
Yeah, you're
And
definitely fortunate in Wisconsin to have those resources. A lot of places don't have anything quite like that. So
yes, unfortunately, resources are great, but they're not sales.
yeah,
You know, we're dumping milk here, and cold storage, basically the state's cheese caves, the millions of square feet of cold storage in the state, full of 4 pallets high, 2 pallets deep of cheddar, it's full.
yeah. I just want to clarify that anybody who just joined, that you personally are not dumping milk. You're talking about Wisconsin as a whole, because I don't want anybody to like just kind of hop into that conversation and be like,
Yeah,
wait, what?
come by with a jug. Yeah.
Yeah. I have heard some rumblings of a little bit of fear that Rush Creek might get put on the back burner again this year, like we've had in the past. So I don't think that you're quite probably ready to have that decision anytime soon. But you're probably not scared to make that decision if it doesn't seem feasible?
I mean, if this year is about survival, which I think it is for us small producers, small businesses, um, then we'll do almost whatever we have to survive. I mean,
Yeah.
within moral reason. And so, yeah, I'm prepared to make that decision. But I'm prepared to make Rush Creek. I ordered the spruce. It's on its way. It's on the boat right now. I ordered the fancy French cheese paper. All those supplies you're worried about being delivered on time. So I ordered everything early. I'm planning on making it. But gosh, who knows what it's going to look like in November and December. If things have loosened up, people are going to be ready to party.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking too that like after all of this too, when it comes to the holidays, people are gonna want that special like standout cheese. So yeah, I
I
just
think
there was a couple rumblings about like he's done it before, but now if you've ordered the stuff for it, then we're just going to assume that that's going to continue on.
you can assume that. I'll at least make one and send it to you, Jenny.
Oh, I feel so special.
Um,
So another question. This is kind of in January, I tasted a new little project that you were working on. Has this time afforded you any more time to like work on some new projects or continue working with that one? Or do you want to tell us about anything exciting you're working on?
mm, um, the cheese, yeah, the cheese you tasted in January was the sheep milk cheese. Yeah. And that came about. That was made March of last year, and it came about because there's some new supplies of sheep milk. There's some new sheep dairies in southern Wisconsin, in particular one not far from here whose milk looks wonderful. Brand new facility. It looks really promising, and so I made a series of batches with Chris Raleigh at his place, and almost like going into a studio with a couple of guitars and jamming or just playing around. And it was as much to think about coming up with a cheese for either one of us as it was to just come up with a cheese for somebody. to bring to the market, just to see a sheep dairy do well, and to supply the country with some domestic sheep cheese. So um, I think we had found kind of proof of concept in the quality. The cheese was good, right?
The cheese was delicious.
The cheese was good. Um, the logistics and the economics, I can't say I really got a handle on it. It's always going to be hard, I think, to make money on making sheep milk cheese in this country. And most importantly, I did not make any more. Did this give me time to do more of that? No, it didn't. And the logistics were really tough this spring to try to get the milk and find a place to make the cheese. We can't bring in outside milk here. We don't have a state approved, milk intake. Our milk intake is a pipeline that runs underground to the barn. So the logistics were always going to be complicated. So I wouldn't say the project is dead, but it definitely stalled out. But the sheep are still milking, and I think we all want to see more domestic sheep cheese. So whether it's me or Raleigh or somebody else who does it, I'd like to see it happen. And the milk is still here, so there's some reason for optimism.
Yeah.
But is it sheep milk is expensive. I mean, it's one thing to stick away a couple 100,000 pounds of your own milk in the caves and hope you're going to sell it, but to go buy a bunch of sheep milk, park it in the cave, now is not the time.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been asking this question of everybody. Just what recommendations would you have for a burgeoning cheese business that's kind of just getting started now? Are there things that you would make sure that needs to be into the business plan and thought ahead? I mean, granted, we're not going to have, hopefully, a pandemic like this all the time, so it's not something that they should really have to think about, but is there anything that you would consider being tantamount to being in a business plan for a burgeoning cheese business?
I don't know if tantamount is the right word for this. Ideal. This is ideal. Having the ability to dial your milk supply up and down has always been very important. It's never been more important than it is right now. Because bumps in the road are always going to happen. This is not a bump. I mean, COVID is a bottomless is a very deep pit. It's not a bump. I mean, we're going to come up, but we're diving deep. But even starting any business, you're going to have this. And if you're a farmstead producer, raising animals is such a long-term commitment, and not having to commit yourself to all of the milk that you're producing, turning it into cheese, is very risky and expensive. Purchasing milk and committing yourself to buying all the milk from another farm is only slightly less risky. If you have the ability to buy milk or not buy milk kind of at will, that makes you so much more flexible. Even if your growth trajectory is pretty smooth, being able to just dial up that milk purchasing at will is so nice. Instead of buying more land and buying more animals and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so that's really come into the light now. We are really lucky in Wisconsin for the most in typical times to have the ability to sell milk when we're not making cheese. You saw Jasper sell cows. They didn't have the ability to dial down production by selling milk. I mean, so sales slowed down. They're milking cows. How do they slow down production? They had to sell cows. It's a very difficult situation. So if you're a small business, Cascadia, I think they're doing a lot of things right, and one of them is they have a wonderful milk supply. I came out last summer and spent a week hanging out with those guys, and when hung out on the farm at the farmers, I mean, they're getting fresh, warm, raw milk, you know, right out of the cow, and they don't have to take it all.
Yeah.
So building that kind of flexibility, your two biggest costs are always going to be milk and labor. And as you grow, the more flexible you're able to make those, it is going to make the bumps in the road smoother.
Yeah. I
Are these really long answers to
No,
your
no, no. I
question?
love it. I love it. Because honestly, like your situation is so different than a lot of people's that the questions that I kind of had in line aren't really pertinent to your business structure and the seasonality of your business because you're kind of coming into it in the middle of it when other people have completely had their entire business drop out from below them in
Yeah,
the middle of everything. So, um, it, but this is an interesting perspective that I feel like needs to be said about seasonality and how that is going to create a different set of um, issues or blessings for your business structure.
yeah, yeah. That's right. And I think on the balance, it could have been a lot worse for us. If this had happened in the fall, it would have been a lot worse. And so I feel so horrible for, say, goat cheese producers. I mean, that timing is just horrible. Yeah. Uh, um, I think I think we're going to be okay. I think, like I said, we know how to buckle down and hunker down and run cheap. I think even if this gets ugly, we're gonna get through it. Look at me. I'm pretty ugly already. I can go through an ugly year or two. I went through 39. Um,
I was gonna say your beard is a little bit long for already being in
ah,
early in the make season. So, usually it's like you can tell when you've started making cheese when Andy's beard is gone.
yeah, it's a lot shorter than it was a couple weeks ago.
Oh, I'm sure. You do like to kind of let it puff out a
Yeah,
bit.
think how many unshorn people there are out there right now.
I know. Well, and also on the plus side too, what I was thinking about is, if the world just has to have a little bit more aged Pleasant Ridge, I mean, is that such a bad thing outside of you not getting the cash flow that you need?
Yeah, as long as we can squeeze it all in the caves. There's a lot of nice cheese coming. The 2019 cheese we're selling now is lovely. There's some goofy rhymes, but texture, flavor, then beautiful.
What
So we're
about some
looking.
80-pound, some more 80-pound wheels or big 40-pound wheels like Liz got and DeBruno Brothers?
I have the farm. I can see it through the window in the make room right now. We'll make an 80 pounder. Damned with COVID. I'm gonna I'm gonna sink a lot of money into an unreasonable piece of cheese right now.
Thank goodness.
It's my daughter's eighth, seventh birthday in a few weeks, and so I'm gonna make her one for her birthday. Because 2 years from now, when it's ready to eat, hopefully this will be an epic story, but a story that a lot of us will live to tell. Um,
Yeah.
Scary for the industry, scary for almost all industries, but I'm really worried about the landscape of artisan cheese producers and retailers and distributors.
Well, I definitely think that there's going to be some big changes, but as somebody that's been in the business for this was my 18th year of being in cheese, and I've pretty much I feel like watched it kind of grow I think that consumers are a lot more savvy than they used to be, and they appreciate, especially like local and like things that you're doing, because you kind of tick all the boxes that hits that consumer, seasonal, grass fed, and
Super
delicious.
good looking. Yeah.
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 All of
And,
the boxes. So,
yeah. There are some reasons for optimism, and I'm probably saying things you've already heard already. But some of these new buying patterns that are emerging, buying direct from producers. We have a lot of small farmers around here doing home deliveries. Those sales are, I mean, they were small to begin with, but now some of those buying patterns may remain when this goes back to normal, and that could be a really good thing. Another reason for optimism, and this is not apples to apples comparing now to the recession 2008 2009, but our business grew through 2009 and 10 and through that recession. And you know again, that was very different, but the explanation then was that okay, people have cut out of their budget the big you know, blowout restaurant meal they do every year with their college roommate and his wife. But instead, they're staying home and they're treating themselves to smaller, affordable luxuries. A piece of nice cheese, maybe a bottle of nice wine, and if COVID kind of sputters along, like some people think it might, um, maybe artisan cheese can have a really a good year or two through this. Maybe we start to look like one of the affordable luxuries, Friday, Saturday night at home. I think there's reason to believe that that could happen
yeah.
to some extent. And
Well, and we're seeing it even with, different uh, cheese shops like the Antonelli's that doing their virtual classes where you can go pick up cheeses from the shop and then sit on a Friday night and watch John and Kendall go through those cheeses. And it's an
uh,
amazing way of using our technology that we've now all apparently found. I do have to say I'm very proud of myself that I was able to get you on a Zoom call with me. So, I've put a
I
little feather in my cap for that. So,
I downloaded it on my phone this morning. You're my first.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
So one last question, really. Um, Basically, what can mongers, shop owners, distributors, what can they do to help you out and make
Yeah.
sure that your cheese is getting sold?
Well, thank you for asking. The simple, obvious answer is to sell our cheese. I think the more important answer is to ask yourself. I'm speaking now to mongers. Mongers, ask yourselves and ask your customers. What do they want to remain when this is over? Those are the products and the shops and the businesses, the people that we need to support now. If we come through this and are left with conglomerate online delivery services and anonymous grocery stores stocked with anonymous commodity products, um, that's going to be an incalculable loss. And so, you know, I understand people are stocking up on canned beans, and I understand budgets aren't what they used to be. But when it comes time for the small indulgences, when you're ready to patronize cheese shops and buy the cheese that makes you happy, buy the cheeses that you know you want to see survive, because that's what this is about, is really survival now. This is not to be too dramatic, but a wave of extinction could pass over our industry here. So what kind of values do we want? We certainly want diversity in the artisan cheese world in the U.S. We want, you know, economic support for family farms. We want to support sustainable farming practices, um, and let's make those priorities now. Because if we don't do that, we're going to lose a lot of those businesses, and once the lights go out, who knows what it's going to take to turn them back on.
100%. I also feel the same way about the restaurant industry too, because I feel like that's definitely a very hard hit industry, but it also is a connective one to ours, because if we're supporting our restaurants that buy local and use local products, then that just kind of like finishes that circle off in a nice way.
Yes, and I haven't said much about restaurants. And I should have. It's been astonishing how important, to realize how important they are to our whole economy. But um, almost 40% of Wisconsin cheese goes through food service. Unbelievable. I would have guessed before this happened, 10, 15%. It's amazing.
Yeah, the food
We
service realm is one that I hope that people start to understand a little bit better, because of the fact that it is such a driving force behind our economy. And right now it's broken, but it's hard for people to understand if they can't buy flour in a 5 pound bag on the grocery shelves, but they don't understand that there's 50 pound bags sitting in a warehouse that was meant to go to a restaurant, and there's
Yeah,
no way to make that happen. I think
reach.
that it's a conversation that for consumers to kind of understand how those food systems are lined up.
Yeah, and I don't operate restaurants, but I've heard some people say that this could be a chance for that industry to hit the reset button in several ways. Labor, wages. Um, I'm out of my depths talking about that stuff, but hopefully there's some reasons for optimism for that industry too, because it's so important.
Well, thankfully, I have a group of people that I'm in touch with that are from restaurants, and I know a lot of them have basically said the same, that they are taking this as a reset and deciding now what values they want to carry forward and what they're going to do. And that's, to me, amazing, because it is an industry that is run on such, slim margins, and it,
Fumes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and low wages for the people working their butts off. And this, I'm optimistic that we do move forward in ways where we do take those values that we hold strong, and that's where we're spending our money and spending our time and our energy on. So I just, fingers crossed.
Yeah. I think a lot of, on a micro level, a lot of people respond to near death experiences by turning around and embracing the things that really do matter to them. Maybe on a macro level, that's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Uh, let's hope so.
Yeah. Well, is there any last Andyisms that we all need to hear? Do you have some grand thoughts that you didn't get out of your brain?
You could have prepared me for that question. I might have had a sonnet or something.
Hey, you can pull the banjo off the wall and sing us a song.
It is there, out of tune, as it always is in April. Uh, I mean, this might sound a little, maybe Wendell Berry-ish or something, but it's been really comforting the last couple of weeks to go through calving and planting and see these, natural things happening the way we expect them to. There is a level of normalcy, and when you feel that kind of the power in springtime, the growth and new life. I mean, it feels so. It's such a deep well, and it's so powerful that you know, COVID is a very scary thing, but nature can recover from this. Like we can recover from this. There's a lot of healthy power out there, and it's made me feel optimistic. Watching new plants poke up and new babies being born. So I wish people stuck in their apartments could see that and feel that. But hopefully, we'll all feel it in some way
Yeah.
soon.
There's definitely something to be said about getting your hands in the dirt, and you know, the animals are going to keep coming whether we like it or
Yes,
not. Milk's going to keep flowing. So, yeah,
it's reassuring in a way.
it is that we're not the center of the universe, oddly enough. All right. Well, I want to appreciate you so much for taking the time and, downloading this weird technology stuffs to join me for this chat. And I really appreciate you taking the energy to talk to everybody about what's going
Uh,
on. So
Anytime for you, Jenny.
don't leave. I'm just going to stop the things.
Okay.
So thanks everybody for joining us.